There we are. So welcome everybody to this morning's Inclusivity TeachMeet. I want to say a big thank you first of all to Derby College Group for supporting us with this session. It's great to have an opportunity to share the practice that the organisation is offering at the moment, and we've got some really great presentations as we go through. I said just a little bit of web etiquette for you. If you could just make sure that your microphones are on mute for us, just to stop the feedback and any background noise, but do feel free to keep your cameras on if you'd like to. It's lovely to see faces wherever you are, whether you're at work or whether you're in your home environment. It's lovely to see you. I just want to pass you over initially. I'm going to stop sharing my screen in the first instance, but just to pass you over initially to Paul Eels, our Chief Executive, who's very kindly offered to come along this morning and do a welcome for us all. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Karen. Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Eels. I'm as Karen said, the Chief Executive of Skills and Education Group, and it's a real pleasure to be able to come to this meeting today to say hello. They normally get me in to do this fire drill and, you know, the directions to the fire exit. So if you could familiarise yourself with your nearest fire exit. There isn't a planned fire drill today. But if it goes off, then hopefully you'll know your way to your own back garden or wherever it is that you'll present yourself to be safe. I'm really, the TeachMeet, I think we've been doing this for a couple of years, haven't we, Karen? We've done periodic TeachMeets all over the place at various colleges. I'm delighted that Derby College are hosting us today, not physically in their building, but I'm delighted that we're doing today's TeachMeet, and particularly one on inclusivity. Inclusivity is a key part of what we do as a sector, but TeachMeets are, for me, a really great idea because practitioners, people on the ground, frontline managers and the workforce across the college and provider sector are the experts. Between you, have a wealth of knowledge and experience, and sharing that in an environment like a TeachMeet is, I think, one of the most valuable things that we as Skills and Education Group can do to facilitate the sharing of good practice. There's lots of people that have lots of things that they want to tell you to do and how to do it, but actually it's you together as colleagues working together that are able to solutionize and bring and develop innovative practice. I remember starting off as a teacher, a lecturer in hospitality in Warsaw College a long time ago, a very long time ago now, and it's actually, I learned more from my colleagues supporting me and developing my practice, and this is a really great opportunity for that. And I think inclusion particularly is a really key thing. So what I do is encourage you to participate today, engage. Karen will no doubt tell you how to do that, and so that we can maximise that time together. But I really want to thank colleagues at Derby College Group that have put, I know, a lot of time, effort and energy in. Sarah, who's going to be talking to you in a moment, Sarah Lee Good, who said, well, it's part of that, it's our day job. Yes, it is. But actually there's a recognition of a significant amount of work that's gone in to ensure that sharing of good practice. So I want to thank colleagues. And with that, I'm going to hand back to Karen. Have a good day, everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you, Paul. That's really helpful. And hopefully have a good day yourself. I'm sure it's going to be a busy one for you, as always. So wonderful to have everybody on board. Yes, we do want you to communicate throughout, and probably the best way to do that is via the chat function. So I will be monitoring the chat, as will my colleague Alison Scott. So if you do have any questions for any of the panelists this morning who are offering their presentations, then do feel free to pop your questions in the chat, and we'll make sure that we go through. We're hoping as well at the end of each of the presentations there will be time for communication and collaboration. So at that point there may well be an opportunity for you to actually share and open your mics and have discussions. So we'll see how we go for time. With many of our TeachMeets, actually what happens is we tend to run over, so we're going to try not to do that today. We have planned the activities with a nice gap between and there is a proposed break incorporated within today's activities as well. So we're hoping we're not going to run over, but we'll see how we go, fingers crossed. But this is all learning, and as many of you know, and have attended many of my sessions, I'm very keen to try new things actually to mirror practice that you offer within your sessions. So if you've been into any of my sessions, we try and do that interactivity and get you incorporated in the event as much as you can. You can see on the screen there that is the outline of today. As I say, do feel free, if you're unable to be here for the whole of the day, you can obviously pop in and pop out as we go through. I will be monitoring the waiting room as we come through. So say we understand. So as you know as well, we are recording today's session, so we can share that feedback with you. I just want to give you a bit of context. Paul's already mentioned about where we've come in terms of TeachMeets, and as I've already mentioned, my passion for them. But this is number 5. We started a couple of years ago with our first one, and that was with Gateway College. And we've offered a number since. This is our second online event. I never really dreamt that we would still be online now. I was really hoping we'd be back together and doing these events in a face-to-face environment, but we are where we are. It does allow us to reach out to a wider audience. So welcome colleagues from outside sort of Midlands and Yorkshire and Humber region and beyond. So welcome to everybody. And I'm going to pass over now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and allow Sarah and Melanie Lancer, Sarah Good and Melanie Lancer to offer a clear thing. Now we seem to have feedback, so bear with me just a second. Yeah. But sometimes when you're talking to do everything at once, so we should now be able to share screens. I should be stopping my share my screen, and we have Melanie Lancer and Sarah Good to offer a welcome from Derby College. Over to you.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Yeah, we're delighted to host this TeachMeet and share just some of the things that we're doing here at the college, you know, as part of our inclusive education practice. Obviously, inclusion has never before been as important in these difficult times in education at the moment, and the impact of COVID is having on our students. We want to promote collaboration, discussion, and we hope we can do that this morning, when we hope we'll learn from you and you can learn from us, which is what the TeachMeet is all about, and spark all those ideas. I'll hand over to Sarah Good at this point, who is our Director of Inclusion and Support here at Derby College. Thanks.
Good morning, everybody. It's really strange when you expect to actually have a response, so I do apologise if there is that echoing moment between me speaking and realising that you're not all going to respond. I do look forward to welcoming you all to a physical TeachMeet at our college, mainly because we do great cakes, really good coffee and a great buffet. So if nothing else, it is worth coming along for that. And we also are renowned for giving out really good free resources. Not that I'm trying to tempt you in the future, but it is worth coming. So bear that in mind. And Derby is at the train station, our main college, and it is in the middle of everywhere. So it's in the middle of the whole country. So there's no excuse not to come along. So I think the first thing to say is well done, really. So well done for getting to Friday this week, and well done, well, getting to Friday every week that we've had so far. And I don't know about you lot, but I'm counting down the Fridays. So we've only got 3 until I can officially lay down for at least 10 consecutive days and not have to think about sanitizing my hands every 45 seconds. So that's a positive. The first thing to say for me is that the team that are on this session with us, the team from Derby, I'm really grateful for you putting the time into this, because I know that Melanie and I ask you to do these things and we ask you to fit them around your working day. So I'm really grateful that you're all here, and I think it's a testament to the work that you all do. I think the idea behind this kind of work is that Melanie and I's vision is to co-create the solutions to the challenges, not only for us as practitioners, but to our sector. And for me, my challenge is to co-create that with every stakeholder. And that means that in future, I expect our students and our employers and the circles of support around us all to be involved in TeachMeets. That for me is when the magic happens, when we've got real congruence, and when our young people and our not so young people who need us to innovate around inclusive practice are here with us, and their voice is at the centre of those solutions that we create. So that's my kind of first premise. When it works magically, it's when it's been driven by the people who have lived experience that inform us of that. And that's truly when I think we start to make magical things happen. And saying that, quite often our young people and our not so young people are embedded and involved in the creation of CPD for our teams, because their voice is far more powerful than mine's ever going to be. We try really hard to enact the strategy, the organisation strategy. And the strategy when I joined the college, and part of the reason I chose to come and work here in 2013, was that the first word of our cross-college strategy was inclusion. And really since then, that kind of clear vision and mission has never actually left our organisational strategy. So that for me is a major impact or major influence, because it means that at a very senior level, from our governance down, everybody understands that that's our intention, and that's a really powerful lever for change. What we then do is we look at some key facts. So we choose key pieces of data that drive our mission, and our mission is enabling everyone. And our key data, or the key things that I refer to most often, are my specific passion around inclusion is around inclusion of those with disadvantage and disability. So if I have a learning difficulty or a learning disability, only 6% of that cohort go into work. 94% of young people with a learning disability in this country will not go into work. Currently, in my 2 specialist curriculum at the college, 70% of our young people go into work. I'm extremely proud of the fact that we're doing so well. However, my team will tell you we're failing 30%. So I'm not interested in the national data, I'm interested in our data, our young people and work. They need to go into work, and that's our plan, that's the mission. The other stark thing at the moment that we're all working and living through is that if you have a learning disability, you are 30% more likely to die of COVID. Sorry, 30 times more likely to die of COVID than anybody else. So your life chances and the impairment on your life chances just through having a learning disability, and therefore having poorer access to medical provision and poorer understanding in our health services, means you're more likely to die just by having a learning disability. So that's for me a really stark reminder that my job is not just about including young people, it's about including the circles of support around them and supporting those wider teams to know and understand the communication from our most complex and our not complex people. That's kind of our mission. We've worked really hard, and we as an organisation, I've been allowed to kind of have free rein. Melanie and I work together on our strategies. The advanced practitioner team that Melanie and Mark lead have been the forefront of the changes that we're making currently. And a lot of those changes are around bravery. It's around our individual bravery in this scenario. We cannot assume that we know everything. I'm 25 years into this career, and I reckon I'm less than halfway through, and I've only got 17 working years left. So I need to change my pace and work more quickly so that I can make the impact I need to make before I retire. And that's the worst case scenario. If I get to retire early, happy days. So for me, to kind of finish the part around intent, inclusion, it should be compassionate, but it should be uncomfortable. It should challenge us. That's our intent. So it's compassionate challenge. There's no such thing as a daft question. So if you've got questions throughout the day, use this opportunity and take every single opportunity to take knowledge, skill, experience, understanding from us. But we don't have it all. So expect the same questions to come back to you, because we need to take knowledge, skills, understanding from you, so that we create that kind of that general Laven Wenger model of the community of practice, which is so powerful. I'm just going to end with, we as an organisation ask our teams to sign a pledge, and I ask them to pledge to become an inclusionist. Inclusion is an active, not passive thing. So our pledge is, I pledge to look out for the lonely, the isolated, the left out and the excluded. I pledge to overcome fear of difference and replace it with the power of inclusion, because I am an inclusionist. So I would really ask you today to compassionately challenge yourself and your thinking and the way we work and the way we structure our work to be totally open to anything around inclusion and inclusive practice. So there you go, Karen.
Wonderful, that's wonderful, Sarah. And I say that passion really comes through for what you and the team have. And I say thank you so much for sharing what you're doing this morning with us all. Lots of information, sort of people sharing where they're coming from on the chat. So do feel free to use the chat to sort of say hello to people, share as your job roles. If you do have questions as we go through, I say myself and my colleague Alison will be monitoring those as we come through today. So yes, and also we do like to tweet. So feel free for us as Skills and Education Group, for your Derby College group, and under the hashtag Grow Your Potential, we will be tweeting throughout this morning's event. So feel free to do that, and I'll pop a little note around that in the chat for you in just a second. So yes, so Sarah's is going to share together with Julie the first of today's presentations. Around enhancing inclusive practice. So Sarah, I think you're going to be sharing your own screen, is that correct? Lovely, you're just on mute.
You're still on mute.
Good morning, Julie.
Morning, everybody. Do you want me to do a little sing and dance while we're waiting?
Oh, bless you. I'm more than happy to share my own if we wanted to, or we'll just wait for Sarah to come back. Hang on. No, we still can't hear Sarah at the moment. Let me just come back on to speak with you. Sarah, do you want to try speaking now? No, let me try muting you and bringing you back that way.
Is that any better?
We've got you now. We've got you. Don't quite know what was going on there. Little bug in the system.
I thought I'd been kicked out before I'd even started.
No, you're still here. You're still here.
I thought the introduction was enough to put everybody off. That's what it was. So hopefully I'm just going to check you can see my screen.
Not at the moment. No, we've still got everybody in the gallery view at the moment. Try coming out and sharing a different screen. If not, we can run it from mine. It's a problem. That's it. We're on. We're on.
I know you probably don't believe me, but I actually do this for a living.
It's just using Zoom. It can be a little bit temperamental at times.
Well, if I tell you that as an organisation we're not allowed to use Zoom because we're a Microsoft college, so we use Teams, it is stretching me. But I should be ready to be stretched, shouldn't I? Because I need to be ready. So the idea behind this session is to look at some of the underpinning premise or the underpinning principles around our inclusive teaching tips, and these should in theory be really applicable whether that's face-to-face teaching or whether it's virtual teaching. And I know we're all transitioning from one model to the other almost on a daily basis for some of my teams. So we start off the week delivering face-to-face, and by the end of the week we've got groups that are studying predominantly from home. So the idea is I'll share some of the kind of intent, and Julie will share some of the actual implementation of that, and then we'll both talk about the impact. And I think the impact comes in two forms really. Part of it's around the human impact and the story of our young people, and the other part of the impact is structurally and strategically about what that does around the data that our young people produce because of our enabling processes. So everything we do in the college is embedded or is housed in the social model of disability. And if you're not aware of the social model of disability, what we found in the college is it's a really useful starting point for the discussion around inclusive practice. And the key question really is, why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we want to make things better for our young people? Why wouldn't we want to anticipate their needs? You know, our public sector equality duty under the Equality Act is that the key word, it's the anticipation. So from a data perspective, for us as an organisation, roughly 20 to 23% of our cohort of students, regardless of age and level of study, have an inclusion need. And on top of that, we've got some key spikes. So for example, we've got an agricultural campus, and in our land-based and agricultural campus, we have between 30 and 42% of our young people who've got an inclusion need. and they're actually the second biggest area of the college that has students with an education, health and care plan, and the second biggest area of the college that have students with an inclusive teaching plan. And the inclusive teaching plan is our response, the graduated response, basically for students with inclusion needs who are less complex. So the idea is that all of that information is taken by teaching teams and the inclusion team and the advanced practitioner team, and that's taken into a group profile, and that group profile informs how teachers teach practically and how we then work with students. One of the key changes that Melanie, the advanced practitioners, and I and the wider inclusion team are enacting over the next 5 years is the investment model. So it's to take the premise away from supporting students and replace that to supporting our staff. So our staff are our permanent resource, and if our inclusive practice is embedded in increasing their skill and ability, then that can impact on more students over a longer time, and then it enables students to be independent. So we've got some key working premise. Inclusion underpins all of the strategies I've already said. It is therefore a strand in all cross-college strategies. What we do is we work from the very positive attribute-based model and the social model of disability. So if I can give you an example from the world of dyslexia, and dyslexia is one of our top 3 inclusion needs. So our top 3 are autism, dyslexia, and mental health difficulties. Quite often, when we've written support plans in the past, we will start with what students struggle with. And this year we're looking at replacing that with where students have got skills and abilities that are positive, and we build from the positive. And then we even write the language we use around how students struggle, we are changing that. So we need to focus support on. They don't struggle with it, that's where we need to focus support. So some of that challenge is for ourselves and the language that we use. So they're the kind of underpinning premise. And we base our responses on differentiating our communication. We work really hard to ensure that there's clarity and that our curriculum fits our student. We try and embed a positive and consistent approach. So when a young person's working with a variety of tutors, which is quite frequent in the post-16 sector, that those tutors are positive and consistent in the language that they use, and that the information that we have is actually utilised in the planning of teaching as well as the kind of implementation of teaching in the classroom. We try and look really hard for the consequences of this work. So we look for happy classrooms. We have extraordinarily high expectations of ourselves, of our teams, of our students. And I'm really proud of that fact, because it shows that when students then go for job interviews or for progression interviews to HE, it shows in their behaviour, and which is magic. And it also shows in our data. And lastly, we try really hard to make sure that we celebrate the small steps and that we be what we want to see. So if we go back to communication, my suggestion would be that if you're looking at changing your practice or in your team's practice, it's going to be very much based on starting the conversation. So one of the things that we've done here is done a training needs analysis, and Julie and I will probably talk about that. One of the keys is that we co-design the curriculum with students, and we're also brave in our pursuit of personalised curriculum. We co-design not only the curriculum, the study programme offer, but also we co-design how the support looks and feels for them, and they drive that. We review that and we change it depending on what the student says. So it is owned by them. However, everybody in their circle of support is embedded and encompassed in that work. And that means that we've then tried to really have great communication between the teacher and the circle of support, and also between the teacher and the wider support team. So Julie, I don't know whether you can share any reflections from your practice as a kind of advanced
absolutely.
practitioner.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I think as an inclusive practitioner, it's really important for me to have as much information as I can about a student, to make them feel comfortable and enable them to progress in the lesson. As we all know, here at Derby College, we're big lovers of food, and we tend to have analogies about food. When a student comes into my classroom, I think about a little bit like them coming into my home and into a safe place. So I know in my classroom that Pete likes his coffee strong and black, but if you give him milk, he's not happy, so he'll kick off. Sarah has to have little bits of food, otherwise she can't speak to you for half an hour because she has to relax and let things go. I know that Ben hates onions, so if I give Ben onions in his dinner, it's going to really upset him for the day. So that's information on an informal level. But as much information as we can gather about our students helps me as a practitioner, and it enables me to have that adopt that enabling approach to my practice. And we try and adopt the mantra in my craft especially, that it excludes nobody. But going back to giving you an example of communication in my practice, I have a selective mute in my group this year. I've had it for 2 years. I've had the frank conversations with my student from day one. We set out the guidelines, we talk about the expectations that she wants to achieve, the things that she wants to achieve. She's desperate to get a level 1. And as we all know, to do a level 1, you have to take part in a speaking and listening activity. So we have built round her scaffolding to enable her to feel comfortable in a safe environment to be able to talk. It's taken time, but I've adapted my practice to enable her to join in the group discussions that we have. It started off with really small steps. To start with, it might be that she would just write things down and hold it up to the group rather than actually have to voice it. But over time, we've gone from having to write things down to just saying a simple word to now to sentences. And if I tell you that last week she was actually gave a presentation to the whole of the group, it's massive. Yeah. Am I going on a bit?
No more than I'd expect you to.
Okay.
So I think that if I can just talk about the clarity, so one of the magical things I think about us all working in the post-16 sector is that real opportunity to flex the study programme. So we don't generally focus too much on the qualification. We start this process and we start transition for all students with inclusion needs, not those who are particularly complex, but for anybody with inclusion need. We start really with what their aspiration is and their intent. So where do you want to be? And we'll work back from that. And quite often that can mean that the first year or the transition with us looks and feels very differently. And the young person needs to understand that we're building that kind of that supportive experience around them in order to enable them. But they have to be part of that. And Julie's just described that with that young person who's an elective communicator, that really it's her understanding what her drivers are. And so that clarity really is key.
I think the clarity goes both ways, doesn't it, Sarah? I think it's clarity from both of us. I need to know what she needs to support her. So it has to be clear and the expectations have to be set out from day one.
Yeah, and you're right, Julie, because we have to create that opportunity for a young person to step into the gap. And I think one of the kind of the big things that we're going to be looking at over the next 12 to 24 months is actually how we iterate that really clearly to parents, carers, other professionals and young people themselves, regardless of that level or severity of somebody's inclusion need. Our job is to enable you to step from one side of the gap where you are now to the other side of that gap, which is an apprenticeship, HE, a job, a voluntary post, because you're never going to be confident enough to get waged work. It's that the clarity is that mission and our intent. And obviously the EAF is the tool there for us. The kind of enactment of that into our actual curriculum delivery can be really sophisticated and can be really, really personalised. So we have one of our specialist provision which doesn't use qualifications at all, because we use a fully personalised curriculum offer. So every single young person, there are about 120 of them this year in that particular academy, works on their own set of criteria and their own objectives, and we use the RAPA method to deliver that. We've got a really strong RAPA quality assurance process around it. Then we've got students who've got a mixed model, so they're doing some qualifications but not all, and we're using the flexibilities in study programs for that. So exactly as Julie described, her young person is massively keen to validate their English skills and to look at level 1 achievement. And part of that speaking and listening. So we've taken that to pieces, and Julie is supported as a teacher to make sure that she can rebuild that. And if that young person then takes 2 years to do a level 1 English qual, which other than the speaking and listening element, she could probably have cracked out in about 4 months. That's what it takes. So that's what we adjust. So it's the clarity of that adjustment. Julie, do you want to, as far as consistency is concerned, do you want to talk a little bit about how you and the teams who you're supporting, whether they be your in-class support staff or they be the practitioners that you're coaching, or indeed your peers in the advanced practitioner team, what's that kind of consistency look like and feel like?
We talk about consistency, but I think consistency is forever evolving. So consistency with communication, obviously, we make sure that we talk to all of us in the team. So from including the student, we talk to the support staff and people that are involved in that circle. So I think it's constantly evolving, the consistency, because depending on the students that you've got in your classroom each year, it's constantly changing. But we the constant approach that we have to our delivery is making sure that we are working as a team. We use every bit of information that we've got to hand. We're like magpie, so we gather lots of information. That information has to be shared. So yeah, from a consistency point of view.
Yeah. And I think there's another element of the consistency there. It's the approach that we take to supporting students and staff and the high aspirations, those high expectations. So we have a model with our in-class support teams, for example, where we use our own apprenticeship levy in order to recruit them as apprentices, and then we really utilise the off-the-job training that they undertake, that they do, so that they're all working from the established starting points that we believe in. And it's that inclusive approach. It's challenging the language they use. It's helping them reconstruct themselves as a practitioner. And actually that then kind of spreads out across the wider team. So I'm working with the advanced practitioner team to really make sure that we've got absolute congruence in what our expectations are and the language we use. And that real key around linguistic determinism and how we deliver those high expectations to students, it is that kind of consistency. It's that aspirational drive to get more than 6% of our young people with learning disability into work, and to enable every young person with autism who's studying at level 3 to deconstruct and reconstruct their programme to get them to their aspiration of HE or into a higher apprenticeship. So it's that consistency, it's that positive drive for me.
I think it is as well, and I think it's modelling that behaviour, like you said before. It's the language that we're using, not only with the students but with the staff as well. So, for example, when we're having a group discussion in the classroom and we bounce ideas around, we don't say, right, I'm going to pick on. It's just a simple word.
Yeah.
We're who we're going to choose to join our discussion. So it's those little bits that we and other staff, when they see you using it, will adopt the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that there is something about the language we use. So, for example, you won't have heard us use any SEN-based descriptors. We will not use SEN. We don't use SEN. We don't use SEND. We don't use additional support. We don't use extra support. We don't use descriptors like LLDD. And part of what I said in the introduction is around that compassionate and uncomfortable challenge. And sometimes we have to acknowledge that our language isn't how young people would want to describe themselves. A young person is never going to want to tell their peers that they are in the LLDD curriculum. What does that mean then? The absolute definition is that they're a student first and everything else comes after that. So we've challenged ourselves and we've very deliberately moved away from any of those descriptors in order to enable people and to share their lived experience. However, if a young person comes to us and describes themselves as an Aspie because they've got Asperger's syndrome, that's what we use because that's their choice and it's their lived experience. I think just to talk a little bit about the data, so we've got really good retention, attendance and progression data tends to be very robust across the college. Roughly the kind of overall data, we've got about 5,000 full-time students, we've got about 400 who've got high needs or an education, health and care plan. We've got another, I did the numbers this morning, we've got another 1,889 young people or students who would be classed as having a GRIP, a graduated response to their individual needs. And we kind of look at those young people and acknowledge the support that they've had, and they review that with us. And then we have to make sure that we are celebrating the small steps in their progression and our progression. As practitioners, we seem to spend a lot of time beating ourselves up or challenging ourselves and actually not celebrating the progress that we've made. And I think that's one of the key things. I think TeachMeet's a real opportunity to share some of that magical stuff that we've done and then say, well, what would be even better if, and challenge ourselves to actually look at what that feels like and how we can enact some of those changes. So just to finish, part of the work that we do at Derby has been the kind of the ongoing community of practice work which we've been doing for about 7 years. And we genuinely are inclusionists. And I know somebody's asked for me to share the pledge, which I'll do in the chat after this. So I'm going to challenge you to say, what one thing can you do on Monday to be inclusive or more inclusive in your practice? And I might be able to give you the answer, which is I would suggest that you engage with our community of practice, our virtual community of practice on Microsoft Teams. So if you want to join that community of practice, you're really welcome. We've been working now with the 2 other centres for excellence that are national, so Western College and City College Norwich. One manages community, one manages people, and our centre theme is around curriculum. And so if you want anything else on inclusive curriculum, you want to kind of be involved, you want to learn about some of the vehicles that we've used for change within our organisation, we use an appreciative inquiry model, which is a kind of a provision mapping process that the DfE are investigating for use in post-16 sector. So we're already working on that. And also we use design thinking, which is a method of change where you basically form a collaborative group from all of the stakeholders involved in the challenge, and you create a solution together and do an experiment. And it's been magical for us. It's been, it's been really, really useful. So that's one of the things that you might want to do in order to become an inclusionist. I'm going to stop sharing there, and fortunately for you, I will shut up. Karen, I told you I'd go on.
No, but it comes out with that passion, doesn't it? It comes out with the passion that you have for what you do as your role, and I think that really emanates across from what you do. So thank you for that, and thank you for sharing. Yes, someone has asked about the pledge in the chat. Sarah, by all means, to say pop it in the chat or pop it over to me by email, and I'll make sure that goes out to everybody joining us today. Similarly, there's lots of information coming through on slides. We will be able to share the slides following the session with you. So do feel free, as I say, to access those once you have them. And thank you to Nora. Nora has put their education blog from City of Westminster College in the chat as well. So further support coming through there. So we've got Rebecca from Southport. She's joined the meeting. I know she's having problems, but I think she's with us now, so that's great. But thank you so much for everybody coming through. And I say, if you do have any queries and questions, do pop those in the chat. And I love that word inclusionist. I think it's a valuable thing, and certainly something that we can sort of help you promote as we move forward. So that's wonderful. Thank you. So next up we have Ben Walkerdine, who's going to be sharing. Now, Ben, would you like me to share your screen, or are you going to be sharing your screen yourself?
No, if you like to, Karen, it'll just take another thing off my mind. That would be wonderful.
Yes, certainly. By all means, bear with me just a second. So you should be able to see my screen now. And if I just click here, it will take us into Ben's presentation. There we are, Ben, over to you.
Lovely. Yeah. So if we can just skip a slide, that would be great. Now, I always check when I come on to introduce myself that I'm not wearing the same shirt as the picture I've displayed. So luckily for me, fresh shirt, different picture, and I shouldn't have gave that away really, should I? But never mind. So yeah, morning everybody. My name is Ben Walkerdine. I'm the digital lead for inclusion, or digital strategy for inclusion, or any of those words in any particular order, depending on the day. I've been working at the college now for 17 years, and Sarah always ribs me about I've never actually been anywhere else, because I was also at 16, I came from school and studied sport. So that's always a difficult one to say. I was support in sport. So yeah, I studied sport for 3 years. I came in at a level 2 because of the GCSEs that I achieved. And then as I was going through my sports studies, the staff and the head of sport at the time saw something in me. So when I came to the end of my BTEC in sport, he asked me to stay on and to become a support member of staff in a course that was just being set up, which was called Sporting Chance. So a nice introduction for me into inclusion and still having that knowledge in sport. I was able to be support in sport and have kind of one foot in sport from my knowledge point of view, and learn about, as it was at the time, additional learning support, but now inclusion. So that's a really nice thing. So my journey, I kind of already started it from school. I was a student there. I became an in-class member of support staff, or an educational support worker, as the title was then. Over a period of time, I really enjoyed my time in sport because it was comfortable. It was something I knew and had, I think, good background knowledge in. And then I also knew the staff as well. So there was no difficult moments in terms of, do I go in the staff room? Do I not? Where do I sit? What do I do? So that was a really comfortable position. Sarah came into the role 7 years ago. It seems like not 7 years ago, and kind of like kicked me up the backside really, and saw the work I was doing and what I could actually achieve, because I didn't always think I could, I'll be honest, and kind of kicked me up the backside, which then put me into like the teaching route. So I studied a level 3 in teaching, and then worked my way up to and achieved a certificate in education. And I got Melanie to thank with that, because she was one of the teachers then. So appreciate that. And Sarah for the kick up the backside. And now I help coordinate and manage staff within the inclusion team, along with Pete, who you'll see later. He's kind of left and then come back, which is a massive positive for me and the team. And Laura, who's also in the call, listening to me go on. So that's my journey, and that's where I am. I think the nice thing with my role is, one, I have left the sports side, but I've gone into the technology side, which I'm also really passionate about, and try and keep as much up to date as I can outside of college. So I'll be honest, I don't find studying ever so easy, but with having the technology interest, it helps me do further reading and complete further reading, and then share the knowledge that I've got. Normally when I deliver anything, I'm more of a doer, and I like to demonstrate things. So I've had to proper cut it down, because those sessions take more than me time allocated. So I've tried to break everything down into our vision in inclusion as far as assistive technology, and I've given some examples of what we've done over a period of time. Now, I don't think Sarah mentioned this, but everything that we offer has taken time. It's not something that you can turn around overnight or produce like in a week. It's something that's developed along with students, staff, and external partners to the college. And at the bottom, our final quote, which I know Sarah and Julia both said this morning, is enabling everybody. And it's and going on a wording, it's enabling and not empowering. And Sarah might pick up on later why we use enable and not empower. Karen, if I can have the next slide, please. That's enough about me. So from a transition point of view, and some of the research that we do, our students are at the heart of what we do. So their view and like vision of their experience at college means everything to us. Along with that, we try and research and use data to help new ideas and get the students' view as a collective. So if I give you an example, there's a young man there, Ahmad, he won't mind me using his name, he's given me permission to share his picture and everything else. He's a superb young man. He has been with, he's been at the college for 2 into his 3rd year now, and is looking to do law at university. There's a link at the bottom, and that's a piece of research from the AOC that helps me and Sarah and the rest of the team work on a project and work with young people who it might not always be that. So for example, I always thought a couple of years ago that the right thing to do was to invite as many young people onto site, students, apprentices onto site, and give them a tour of the college to help familiarise themselves. But not every student has the same starting point. So a particular student's starting point might be the comfort of their own home. So it could be in the bedroom if that's where they've done the studying and that's where they've been comfortable when studying from school. So the nice thing about, from an assistive tech point of view, or I suppose any technology point of view really, is the VR virtual reality headsets. So another important thing is to work with the wider college. So I've worked very closely with the EdTech team, also part of Melanie's team. And we've designed 360-degree tours of each college site. So obviously before the situation that we're in, it was really successful, because what we're able to do is work with, send out a virtual reality headset to the young person, and they can tour the college virtually, but in a comfortable situation and a comfortable place to be. And like I said, sometimes that was at home. I've been out to schools and worked with certain students, and I've kind of been hands-on, and just kind of painting a picture, giving verbal instructions on how to work the virtual reality headset and what they should and can able to see. And the data and the impact has shown that that's worked really well. Unfortunately, this year we've not been able to use the virtual reality headsets or VR headsets. That's a long thing to say every time you want to say VR, because of obviously different students wearing the headsets and being around the nose and the mouth. So what we've done is we moved that onto our Moodle page, and some people might be familiar or not with Moodle. It's just the college like document sharing system, I suppose, best way. Virtual learning environment, VLE, that's it. I know all these acronyms. So that's worked really well to start with, and we've had some really encouraging and positive feedback from the students that have used it. So they've worked really well. And I would like to say that from a transition point of view, it's not always about, we all automatically think, oh, it's about a young person or student apprentice transitioning into college. It's also about that transition out of college as well. So if a young person will benefit from having a 360 tour of a workplace, again, including apprenticeships and students going into work, or a 360 tour of a university that might be going to, then we'll open the doors and work with wherever that student would like to go. Just checking my notes, make sure I've covered everything. So and again, it's about, from that transition, it's about planning for the students' journey, their journey. So I've gone through my journey, the student's journey at college, from starting with the aspiration. So where does the student want to end up? And then we build a package, a personalized package around what that student needs to make those as comfortable as we can. We've also, from a data point of view, we try and use as much data as we can. So Can we move on, Karen, if that's all right? So from a data point of view, you can see at the bottom of the screen, it's not a sales pitch, it's just something we use. Text help and mind view. So text help is, I don't know if some people might know it as read and write or read write gold in the past, and you've got all different versions. So we've currently got a membership to that. This can be used from a normal way of working point of view, so it can be used in exams. And obviously, as you all know, a normal way of working is not a college specific, it's an exam specific point of view, and it enables the students to have that normal routine when it comes to exams. So try and help with that exam stress and that anxiety and that exam anxiety point of view. So we use that when we thought about. So I did quite a lot of research into the two companies, and I went out and did and actually chatted and had demonstrations. But then we brought the companies into the college. So the sales team for the companies actually spoke to the students and gave their presentation to the students. So Sarah's already said we're a Microsoft college. So we set up a QR code and a Microsoft form, and after each pitch, the students gave their feedback and their scores and some evaluation on where they could or use that software, or where they thought, no, I don't think it's going to work. It's not going to work for me, and this is a reason why. So we kind of took all that information on board, and again, it's about having the student's voice at the heart of everything from an inclusion point of view, everything we do. Just touching back on the VR headsets, I work with Laura and the rest of the inclusion coordinators from a VR headset point of view. So we had something called relaxing rhythms, and it's something that we had for years, and Sarah tasked me with updating it. So it was where you'd put like these sensors on your fingers, you were strapped to, not strapped to, that sounds a bit vicious, doesn't it? But you're attached to a computer like next to a desk, so there was no portability there, and it was all really old. So I wrote an article on it, but I was just one Saturday morning, this is how exciting, sorry Julie, this is how exciting my life is at the weekend. I was watching Australian football one Saturday morning, and it just come to me. It was like, right, what have we got that we can already use? So we used the VR headsets, and we uploaded, along with the EdTech team, some free mental well-being apps onto the virtual reality headsets. Now that included mindfulness and some relaxing techniques and strategies, and we showcase them at every opportunity that we can. When we have like open days at the college, or when we have open events for students, whether it be like induction or lots of times throughout the year, and they've gone down really positively. And it's about getting the word out on how it can be used in a positive mental well-being environment. And we also use it for exam stress as well, so to help relieve that exam stress before going into the exam room. We offer, if some students would like some rehearsal to just try and calm them anxieties down, then we offer that there as well. We offer lots of hardware, so I've had to make a list just to make sure I don't forget everything. Livescribe pens. So we use Echo 3 Livescribe smart pens. Now they use digital paper, so it's like it's run-of-the-mill notepad, and it's got lots of dots on it. Each pen costs about between £90 and £110, but again, that's something we've built up over a long period of time, work with the IT team and the wider college to help add to that each year. So certain students find that really useful. So it's a pen with a dictaphone built in. You can get them that can be Bluetooth to like a tablet computer or an iPad or whatever, but so we're not relying on other technologies, and it's really free and easy and discreet to move about. And that's something we offer. So again, it's about working with in-class, the teaching staff. So it's about, okay, I've got this that would help me take notes within the classroom. Am I okay to record the session? So there might be some parts where some teaching staff might be delivering some delicate and sensitive information where sometimes I might have to be stopped, but from the most point of view, this can be used. So basically, I don't know, I've got a pen here, but I can't show you, but definitely YouTube it. It's called a Livescribe Echo 3 pen, a dictaphone in it. It records a session while students are making notes. So you can just make short, or students or staff, we have staff using it across the college, and that's kind of an important point of view. I'll come back to. But yeah, you make little sub notes, but what you can do when you're reflecting on the notes that you've made, so you're not writing lines and lines, you can literally press the end of your pen onto the paper, and it will go back to what was said at the particular time that little, like, I don't know, going back to my sport days, if we're talking about a bicep, you would just write bicep. The pen would record what was said, and then when coming back to it, you put your pen where you wrote bicep, and it will literally just not repeat in a robotic way, but it will just say back or record. It'll play back, that's the word, it will play back what was said at that time. So we find that the students' feedback and the data we've collected is really positive. We also offer training on each of these devices as well. We've also invested in some, they're called C-Pen reading pens. So they're exam pens, again, from a normal way of working. Students need to evidence, and staff need evidence that they're using that throughout the day, each day throughout the year up until exams, because there's no point in giving a student a piece of equipment, assistive or otherwise, and then all of a sudden use it in exams, because that's not what expected. And then we've also got a range of tablets. So I'm a bit of an Apple geek, I'll admit. So my knowledge is in that, and obviously we've got Windows and Microsoft computers. But some students use Samsung devices, so we've got those. So we've invested in a range of software because it's personalised to the student, and not one size fits all. And we also offer laptops and 2-in-1 computers if that's that. From a software point of view, I've already mentioned Text Help and MindView. We've also created, because we're a Microsoft college, we have created 27 short accessible videos that are all available in the Microsoft suite. I've just put a couple of clippings there. I am a bit disappointed that no one's hearted it, or as you can see on the picture, there's quite a few people have seen it, but no one's loved it. So I'm a bit disappointed. So I'll get on to my staff about loving those videos. Not that I've taken it to heart and shared it with you all, but that's my limit to disappointment. But it covers everything. So those 27 videos are everywhere. So in Teams, in Word, PowerPoint, OneNote, and I've put a few in Outlook as well. And these are short, sharp, snappy videos, straight to the point, and for staff and students. So keep pushing these on CPD days out to staff, because the more remote teaching we're doing, the more these elements are becoming more and more used. But in my personal opinion, it should be the norm, and it should be a part of good classroom inclusive practice. All of those videos. We've put them on YouTube as well. Well, the EdTech team have put them on YouTube for us as well. So we're able to share them, but they have got me on it. So apologies if you do get wind of any of those. And then just lastly, so Ray can crack on with her bit. The future ideas. So a couple of things. I follow Twitter quite a lot, and anything to do with specifically Microsoft, so we can link it back to the job. So that's something that I suggest people use. And one of the key contacts might really, from a Microsoft point of view, sorry to any Google people out there, but it's Mike Tolfson, and I'll put him in the chat. So if you want to follow him, I definitely recommend it. I regularly retweet a lot of his things and share a lot that he puts in, and he's one of the top chaps in Microsoft that develops these accessible and inclusive features. Over the summer, I come across a Bitmoji Classroom, and that's like that's a digital classroom. So again, it can be done on PowerPoint, and it's got links to different places so students can self-study, and obviously that can be made accessible as well. I was going to ask Julie just to mention that, but definitely go on YouTube and it will show you how to create it. That's how I've learned it. So it's a Bitmoji Classroom, and as you can see on there, that's a Bitmoji of me on the slide that I've taken a shot off there.
Can I just say, Ben, just to reiterate the Bitmoji Classroom, I've used it really extensively on my online remote delivery when I have encouraged my students to work independently on independent tasks when they've been working remotely. The Bitmoji Classroom has been awesome. It works really, really well. You're able to voice record over it, so students can refer back to it all the time. So it's been really invaluable for me during my remote session. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Oh, thanks, Julie. I'm glad you jumped in there. Appreciate it. And then we've also developed an app wheel as well. So the idea was taken from Core Scotland, and that's the title of the website. And we've developed our own. So we've used all the most used apps, and the staff have kind of come together from a data sharing point of view, an information sharing point of view, and shared the most relevant apps that students can use, whether that's, and we've kind of, in an app wheel, we've kind of like carved it up into like an inclusion need. So students with dyslexia, we'd recommend these types of apps, so on and so forth, mental well-being, so on and so forth. And then it's just about little tips. So something I'm going to leave you with, and it's maybe not an accessible point of view, but from like a knowledge point of view, and it's taken and it's informed lots of people within the team. Is I read on Tuesday that in YouTube, when sharing a YouTube clip, to keep everyone safe, so you've got the suggested apps, suggested videos and other types of things. When sharing a video, you get the link in the bar at the above, and in between I've got to get this right, so I've written it down, where in the YouTube bit of the title, in between the T and the U, put a hyphen, and then click enter into the toolbar, and it will get rid of all the comments, and it will get rid of all the suggested videos on the side. And that's just from a safeguarding point of view, but because I read it the other day, I thought I'd share it with you all today. And here endeth my session, I think.
Wonderful, thank you, Ben. You gave some great tips there. I really like the Bitmoji Classroom. I'm very interested in lots of different accessible apps and resources online myself, so I'll certainly be having a look at that. I'm not sure about sort of making myself into some sort of figure, but maybe. But yeah, really like that. And bit. What we will do, we will share. Dave has just asked, can you share a screenshot of the YouTube and how to make it? But maybe we can put it in the link, Ben, if you would be so kind, so we can share that. What I can do with everybody too is, once we have, because we are recording the session, I can share the chat. So any of the links or information that's coming through on the chat, I'm more than happy to share the actual whole chat with everybody, so you can scroll through and pick out that content, not a problem.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Ben. Really, really interesting. We've got Saray next. Saray is here. Saray, would you like me to share my screen, or would you prefer to share your own? It's completely up to you.
Yeah, Karen, if you could, that'd be brilliant.
And bear with me just a moment. I'm just getting it sorted my end. My PowerPoint's just closed down, but never mind.
It's always the case, isn't it?
Oh, I know, isn't it just? We're just spinning through it now, so bear with me just a second. Right, I am ready my end. Let me just start your PowerPoint, and then I will start sharing my screen. Lovely to have you on board with us this morning, Soraya. Thank you so much for helping us out with this morning's event.
Thank you for inviting me. Right, I'll just jump right into it, if that's all right, Karen.
By all means, tell me when you want to go through.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, my name's Soraya Cliff. It's a bit of an unusual name. Don't worry if you forget it, because like loads of people say Soraya, Serena, lots of different things. But I'm the character education and tutorial lead for Derby College, and I could talk all day about what I do. I feel extremely lucky and very passionate about what I do. But for the sake of this session, all you need to know about me is the fact that I am human, and I'm going to be talking to you guys about being human. And the social pedagogy module that quite a few of us did at Derby College, we did over about 7 weeks, and Derby University came in and sort of talked us through the module, so I can't take full credit for this session, but what I'm going to try and do is squeeze it into a 20-minute session, and I'll be sort of talking you through some of the models that we looked at, and it's a good way of sort of reflecting on our own practice, and again, like talking about being human. So at times it might be a little bit personal, but that's part and parcel of being in education, isn't it? It is a personal type thing that we do in terms of molding and shaping young people. All right, Karen, if you want to go to the next slide. So obviously, I'm not expecting anybody to shout out or anything like that. You can use the chat, or by all means just quietly reflect. What I want you to do throughout this session is think about one relationship in your life that has shaped you. There will be quite a lot more than one person, but who was it with? How did they influence you both personally and professionally? And how can you develop and emulate some of these traits in your practice? And one of the sort of people in my life that I always think about is my music teacher. As a young person, I lacked a lot of self-confidence, and my music teacher saw something in me that I didn't perhaps see in myself, and he spent years and years like trying to teach me how to be patient with myself, how to be kind to myself. And I'm naturally quite an introverted person, and he taught me the massive skill of sort of faking your extrovertedness, and I ended up getting on stage and performing to quite a lot of people at a young age. And that's something that I like to put into what I do here. Like, I like to see things in people that they might not necessarily see themselves, and have that kindness and patience to work with them and develop them into sort of the future citizens of the sort of the next generation. So that's something for you to think about. There will be at least one person that shaped you, whether it's a family member, whether it's a friend, whether it's a teacher. And it's something to really think about, because we do shape people in the roles that we do in education. We try and make them more rounded people and develop their characters, as well as teaching them maths, English, etc. If you want to go on to the next slide, Karen. Mine's very slide based. So what is social pedagogy? Social pedagogy is basically about your whole tongue. So whole tongue is a German phrase that means being your whole self, and being authentic. It's about the practice that involves care and education. And as I said, what we'll be doing is going through some of those models, which will be, some of it will resonate quite a lot. It won't be like groundbreaking to you, but it might be something that you've not necessarily always thought of. And that's what I want you to sort of take from this session, is to think about your own practice and how you incorporate that care into what you do as an educational practitioner. Okay, next slide. So the first model I want to talk about is the diamond model. As I say, I do talk very fast. I would recommend looking up some of these models separately if you are interested in them, or by all means drop me a message, and I can talk about this for days, so please do. But the diamond model in my head is a lot like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's what needs to be there before you can get to that holistic learning. So it's things like that well-being and happiness, relationships, empowerment, positive experiences that then lead to the holistic learning. The diamond model basically says that we are not always polished and sparkly, and there are some days where I do not wake up polished and sparkly. Some days I forget to brush my hair, so I can completely relate to this. We all have the potential to be, though, and I always think about our students who have to retake English and maths, and the phrase always comes to mind. I think it's Albert Einstein that said it. So if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it will always live its life thinking it's stupid. And that is very much how our students feel when they have to retake their English and maths. So the fact that we all have the potential to be sort of sparkly and polished, we have to find that common interest, that thing that those students are passionate about, and incorporate it in our teaching. So things like, if your student is interested in football, I know some students can talk day in, day out about which team they support. You bring that into the teaching and you talk about sort of the league table points. You could tell I'm not into football, but you know what I mean. And then if they're into social media, incorporate that into your English skills, that kind of thing. So it's about finding that little sparkly bit and shining it up and making those students sort of bright and sparkly and empowered enough to learn, basically. Okay, so the next slide, if you will, Karen, is Seninger. So learning zone versus panic zone. So I'll start from the middle. The comfort zone here is where we feel most comfortable, and we feel like that when we're learning a lot of the time. So we're seeing students when they're revising, they'll revise something they already know because that's what they're comfortable with. The panic zone is where no learning can take place at all. That's controlled by anxiety and by fear. And we see it a lot of the time when students don't know the answers to things. So we see it when they act out and they're not really sure on what to do. So they'll do anything else but the work. And then the learning zone is where the magic happens. That's just outside of their familiar and comfortable environment and allows for growth and learning to take place. So that's where that challenge happens. Throughout COVID, I don't know about you guys, but I have definitely fluctuated between sort of the panic zone and the learning zone. I've had times where I've read through an email 6 or 7 times and it's just not gone in. And I've been thinking, what is this person trying to tell me? And then I've had other times where I've had an hour of pure motivation and I have to take full advantage of that because I need to get everything done whilst it's there. The thing with us as adults, we can sort of navigate ourselves out of the panic zone. We can say to ourselves, okay, right, I'm feeling a bit anxious right now. I'm feeling quite fearful. I need to go for a walk. I need to make a cup of tea. But our students don't always have that emotional skill to get themselves out of that panic zone. And that's what we need to be mindful of. We need to be able to coach our students out of that zone so then learning can take place. Okay, next slide, Karen. The next sort of model we looked at in social pedagogy is the head, hands, and heart approach. So the head, hands, and heart approach is who we are, what we value, what we know, and what we do. So one of a good example of this is you have a student who is kicking off because they don't want to do like a maths question. I always bring it back to maths because I'm not very good at maths myself. Is kicking off because he doesn't want to do maths. And your intellectual buy-in is you need to get that student engaged. You want to get him back onto whatever paper you're doing, etc. The emotional buy-in is you have to relate to what that student is feeling. You have to think, right, okay, why is he kicking off? Like, what can I draw from this? So, okay, he's quite fearful because he doesn't understand. So I need to think about all those emotions that they are sort of processing at the time. And then the hands is the behavioral effort. So what do you do with that knowledge? Do you let them go for a walk? Do you take them outside and have a chat? It all depends on the situation. But ultimately, throughout education, we have to listen to our head and heart before we then do something about what is happening with our students. Okay, next slide. Okay, the 3 Ps. So the 3 Ps is something I've actually had quite a lot of personal experience about. So last year I was working with a lot of the looked after children over at our Joseph Wright building. And whenever I came across a looked after child and I sort of spoke to them, the minute I said support, they switched off. They've had so many people in their lives coming along saying, I want to support you. I'm going to do this review with you. Let's look at your progress. You could just see that light at the back of their eyes just absolutely switch off. And it's because they don't actually believe that you know what they're going through. And it is quite a unique set of circumstances. So my own professional boundary is normally I would never talk to anyone about this, but I'm adopted. So I have like quite a lot of understanding of what looked after children have been through. And normally with a student, I wouldn't really touch on this at all, but by giving something a little bit personal, by saying, I understand what you're going through, I've also experienced this and this, it allows them to sort of build that connectivity and that trust with you. And that's something that's really helped in enabling students to feel like they can come and talk to me about whatever issue is happening or what's happening in the classroom a lot of the time. What I won't do is make it about me, and that's really important, because I've seen quite a lot of teachers and coaches and things do this before, where a student will come to you with an issue, and actually then the person will then talk about themselves for an hour and think that they're helping in that respect. So for me, I will give them that little bit of personal information, but I won't go into the private, so the ins and outs of everything of that time before I was adopted, kind of thing. But it's all about that connectivity and that trust that you decide to bring. So we'll all have different professional, personal and private boundaries that will sort of develop and keep changing depending on which student that we work with. Okay, next slide. So boundaries, what I want you to do in the chat is just think about boundaries for a second. So what's your boundaries with your students look like? How fixed are they? Should they flex, and why? And what should boundaries be based on? So if you just want to type away. It's always that nerve-wracking moment when you're presenting and it's that little bit of quiet, isn't it? As people do things. Oh, some really nice comments coming through. Genuine empathy is so powerful, can really cement relationships. I completely agree, Alison. Sort of things my dyslexia difficulty with. Yeah, David, completely. It's that little bit of empathy that you are bringing out of yourself and relating to your students. Thank you for sharing that. Karen, yeah, fantastic. Believe that boundaries should be agreed. Completely agree with that. One more. Well, couple boundaries should be communicated, clarified and consistent. Or Pete, you do like your C's and your P's, don't you?
Of course, definitely.
Languages is so important for the labels. Fantastic, authentic, agreed, clear, fairly applied, agreed boundaries need to be regularly reviewed. I think we learn more about students as individuals. Absolutely, yeah, I completely agree with what Melanie's put there. And as time goes, as you get to know them a lot more, those boundaries will sort of fluctuate and bend, or sort of get a bit stricter depending on what student you are working with. Yes, it is. Yeah, so it does link really nicely with what Julie was saying earlier, ground rules from the start. Okay, wonderful. Oh, it's so nice that you're all getting involved. Thank you for that. But yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. It's good to have those boundaries in place, but they do evolve as you get to know the students. I think that's the general consensus there. Okay, Karen, if you want to go to the next slide. Now, I don't know how videos work on Zoom. Can you click on that and see? If it's not working, no problem. I can't hear you.
Oh, I always tell people not to put themselves on mute, and thought I was off mute. Doesn't seem to want to play.
No problem.
So we can certainly share the link following the session, can't we?
Absolutely. So I am a massive fan of Brené Brown, and she talks a lot about the differences between empathy and sympathy. And if you want a good book to read, or if you are not sure what to buy over Christmas, or tell people what to get you for Christmas, I would recommend her book, Dare to Lead. In her first chapter, she talks about going in front of a stage in front of lots of CEOs. And she's a lot like me. She's introverted naturally, but she can project being extroverted when she needs to be. And she was really nervous about this sort of public speaking event that she was going to. She was practicing in the car, and she was just thinking, oh my goodness, there's so many like CEOs, and I need to be really impressive, because there's a lot of like impressive people and quite intimidating people that I'm going to be talking to today. And anyways, she rang her husband just before going on stage, and she said, I don't know, I don't want to do this, I feel sick, I don't want to be here, kind of thing. And he said, you've just got to remember, they're people. And as she sort of peeked around the curtain and looked into the audience, she saw a woman who was actually her neighbour, who helped take her kids to school. And she also saw somebody else she recognised who had been in some of her AA meetings. And all of a sudden, she realised that, yes, we are all just people, and all we want is that ability to connect with others. And that's all what this is, isn't it? We just want that ability to connect. And it can be so difficult digitally. but it is something, and it's all our students want as well. So before she goes on stage, all she says to herself is people, 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 and that's her little mantra to sort of ground herself before sort of talking to wide ranges of audiences. And I would definitely, if you've never heard of her before, give her a Google on sort of on her TED Talks and things like that, because again, she talks about that power of vulnerability, and vulnerability is actually one of the most attractive things you can be as a human being, or most of the attractive things that we find in human beings, but we're so reluctant to actually show our own vulnerabilities. And I always think that teenagers have that sort of authenticity sniff. They can sniff out who's being real and who's not, and having that little bit of vulnerability, showing that little bit of a personal side, can really help them trust you and understand sort of where you're coming from, kind of thing. Okay, Karen, last slide, I believe. Okay, so just over your break, I know you're probably absolutely dying to get a cup of coffee and a cake. As we say at Derby College, we do all love our food. As Sarah was talking, I was just like, oh yeah, I could really go for one of those cakes right now. But what I want you to think about is this quote. So, values are like fingerprints. Nobody's are the same, but you leave them all over everything you do. And you can again use the chat function, or just quietly reflect. It's completely up to you, but I want you to identify 2 places where you've left the fingerprint of your values, because I can guarantee you've left your grubby value fingertips all over lots of different things. But try and think about 2 things, because in education what we do a lot is think about how we can improve constantly, how we can build on what we've already got, but we rarely look back and reflect and think, actually, I've made a massive impact there on that young person, or I've done this in this sense. And just feel proud of yourself, because that's what we're all here to do, aren't we? We're here to shape those young people and to have the sort of biggest impact we can on everyone, basically. But yeah, if anybody's got any questions, please put them in the chat. I have absolutely fired through this presentation. I thought that would take me a lot longer. But yeah, hopefully, I think it's a break now, isn't it, Karen?
It is, and perfect timing. We're bang on time, Sarah. You've done a wonderful job. But great. I think there's lots of really positive comments coming out of that. What I'm going to do actually over break is leave this screen up. And it will be great if perhaps people want to reflect while they're having a coffee, having a break, having their cake maybe. I think it's banana for me. But we'll leave this screen up, and then do feel free to pop your thoughts in the chat as we go through. We can just allow this to continue. But thank you so much. Very well presented. Lovely to see you on screen and to hear you speaking. That's wonderful. I'm certainly looking at Brené Brown, and apologies for the link didn't work. I think what we'll do, we can certainly source the video and then pop the link in the email that goes out following the session. Wonderful. Okay, so it's break time, everybody. Feel free to make sure you stretch your legs, you get yourselves a drink, have a comfort break. And what we will do, as I say, I'll leave this screen up on the board so you can reflect thoughts. By all means, pop them in the chat. And we're back on screen with Pete at 11:35, so you've got 10 minutes. So go and have a break. I'm going to just hide myself behind the camera, have a break myself, but do pop your thoughts in the chat as we go through. And we'll see you in 10 minutes. Take care all. See you in a mo.
Thank you, Karen.
I can't actually believe it's 11:30.
Morning. We're back. Everyone's just coming back into the room. So welcome everybody. I'm just going to, we're recording, so that's fine. So lovely to see everyone. We've got Pete next. And Pete, I believe you're going to be sharing your screen, your end in just a second. So that's great. Some lovely comments coming through on the chat, and thank you to Soraya for sharing those links. As I mentioned in the chat, to say we will share this with you following the session, so that you have all the access to all the different links and information that's coming through. So thank you for that. Pete, I believe you're going to be sharing your screen, so feel free to do so. There we are. Wonderful. We can see that perfectly. Thank you.
That's good to know. That's good to know.
Lovely. So I'm just going to mute myself and over to you. Thank you so much for your input this morning.
Right, no problem. Thank you very much, Karen. Thank you, and thank you, everybody. Right, so these are quite difficult acts to follow. I've been very glad there was a break in between Soraya's presentation and mine, so people could go away and have some cake and some coffee and reflect. But yeah, so I'm just going to go, thanks everyone. Thanks for doing such a great job and making my job even harder. I think also because you've given me so much to think about, and inevitably that means that what I was going to present slightly changes, because you made me think about other things. Now, my session this morning, which I will do my very best, Karen, to run to time, is all about positive learning behaviours and promoting positive behaviour. Now, whenever I try and deliver CPD, I always come from the angle of thinking about empathy, which fits in very well with what Soraya just presented. So thank you, Soraya. Because whenever we talk about inclusion or learning, then obviously it's very individualised to each of the people that we deal with. And we've got a great opportunity to be a very positive and unfortunately sometimes a negative factor in that. And after listening to everybody this morning, it made me think about, what about inclusion even further. So I'm an inclusionist, have been for a very long time, and that's thanks very much to Sarah, who spoke earlier. And inclusion is about, for me, is about what it is to experience being human. And I guess that's why I feel like I need to come at this from an empathy point of view when we're talking about learning and development. And again, that fits in with what Soraya was talking about. So without further ado, let's crack on, because I've only got a short amount of time. So I'm going to start with a statement. So the statement that I just put on that slide there, which we're not going to have a lot of time to explore. So really, this is a seed which I wish to plant. So obviously, our presentations will be shared afterwards. So don't feel like you have to reflect on this directly now. But the statement is: positive behaviours facilitate success more than qualifications do. So I would like you to have a think about that over a period of time. We will return to it towards the end of the presentation, so I'll have another time to think about it. But that's quite an ambitious statement, I think, and it's quite a bold statement. And I, as well as being trying to drive things through empathy, I'm also ambitious, because I think part of being an inclusionist is about being ambitious. Sarah mentioned earlier about we're not successful until 100% of all of our learners have left with a positive outcome and a positive experience. If anybody leaves one of our organisations, our institutions, our colleges, our schools without having that positive experience, then in some part we've failed. So that involves being ambitious. So my ambition today is to hopefully to get you to engage with the message that I'm sharing about promoting positive learning behaviours, but also for people to take away their own perspective, their own individual perspective about their pedagogy and andragogy. I saw a comment in there I really like that. I hadn't separated before the art and science of teaching children, pedagogy, with the art and science of teaching adults, andragogy. So thank you very much. I think it was Sophie that shared that, so thank you. So those are my two ambitions for today, about your own perspectives and the message that I'm sharing. So here's a seed that I've shared with you, this statement, and we'll come and reflect back on that a little bit later. So I'm also very driven by making every individual in the room work. So just process that for a second, because I'm now going to get you to do some stuff, because this is not going to just be about me talking. So I'm hoping everyone can grab, Sophie's got a thumbs up, thank you, Sophie. So hopefully you've got something at hand to maybe write something down. Maybe that might be something you write digitally, so open a Word document or a piece of paper, which is absolutely fine. But I'm going to put 5 sentences at 30-second intervals up onto my slide. I'm going to ask each of you to complete each of those sentences. Now, this isn't for you to share. If you want to share it in the chat, feel free to do so, but this is more for you. This is a reflection for you, and not necessarily, I'm not asking you to share it, but you can share it if you choose to. So the first sentence, and I say I'm going to do these at 30-second intervals, so I'm getting my watch out ready. So the first sentence is, being positive is. Okay, and the next sentence is, to be polite is to be. The third sentence that I wish you to complete is, to be punctual, you need to be. So what do you need to be punctual? Just want that sentence. Another 30 seconds for that one. I don't want anyone to worry. No one's going to be tested on these later. I'm not going to spag anybody, I promise. Fourth, we've got being prepared is. Oh, I think someone's come back from getting some cake. I hear some furious typing. There's smoke coming out of someone's keyboard somewhere. And last but not least, we have our fifth sentence, which is professional means. We've got 5 sentences there. So hopefully everyone can get, even if it's not written down on a piece of paper, if it's within the ether of the brain, then that's fine too. I say I'm not going to ask any, if these are for your reflections. Okay, brilliant. Right, so hopefully we've got some answers. Even if you just thought about the ends of those sentences, you'll have got those. Now, so far, so we've had a seed. We've had that statement that I shared about behaviours facilitating success more than qualifications. Got you to do a quick activity there about completing sentences. Now, I'm going to get you to do another one. Now, this next activity, I would like it, if possible, if you've got something to write something down on, that would be great. Either a post-it note or a piece of paper or something like that. And a little bit later on, this is something I'm going to ask you to share, and I'm going to ask you to share it by holding up to your camera. So hopefully everybody who has a camera will be able to switch that on. You don't have to switch it on right now. I'm just giving you fair warning that I will ask you to do that a little bit later, to share this activity. So this activity is when I want you to draw a representation of your brain. So when I say that, I don't mean what it physically looks like. I understand it's a bit pink or grey, depending, and it's got like bobbly on the outside because of the cortex, like bark. But what I'd like you to do is it's your experience of using your brain. So some visual representation. If you don't want to draw, feel free to do a mind map or a group of words or however you wish to do it. If you want to do an interpretive dance, that is fine too, but I will expect you to share that interpretive dance with everybody. So just going to give you just 30 seconds to a minute just to do that. So a representation of your brain as you experience it. Okay, so I'm just going to give you about another 10 or 15 seconds to do that. I do know this morning is a whistle-stop roller coaster ride, talking about behaviours and inclusive learning behaviours. Okay, by all means, carry on doing that in the background. We're not going to ask you to share it straight away, but be prepared, as I say, to just put that to one side once you've done it. And I will be asking you to hold that up to your camera in a little bit so we can see a gallery of brains. Okay, so as you can see on the title of the slide, this is talking about what is normal. So what is a normal brain? And obviously there aren't brains that appear nice and neatly in jars and everyone goes, oh, that's what your brain should look like, or that's how you should experience your brain. It's all going to be different for everybody. And that's really the focus of what we're talking about today, isn't it? About inclusion. So what do I mean when I use the word behavior? Because very often we have a very clear understanding when we say behavior, what we mean. But I think it's, for me, as a specialist in inclusion, neurodiversity, ADHD and autism, that behavior actually is a little bit more complicated than we often think about it. So whenever we talk about anything inclusive, we've got to think about the individual first. Now, the individual then has behaviors, so the behavior we've seen. Now, it's important, as you can see on the slide there, where we separate the individual with their behavior, because what we don't want to fall into is fundamental attribution error, which is where we judge someone's character, personality by what we see them doing. Because we are, of course, watchers. We observe people's behaviors and we observe individuals in their environments, and we have to make judgments and thoughts on that. But what leads to that behavior? And now this could be a very long, this is, you know, considering we've only got 15 minutes for the whole of this, I'm not going to go into any great detail, but we could separate it into 3 different things. So there's the brain stuff, also known as neuroscience. So there's the stuff that's going inside someone's head that they may be conscious of, and they may also be unconscious of, that happens before they actually act or behave. Now, for that, we've also got, and this is obviously very important for anybody working with teenagers or children, especially anybody between, David's nodding his head, I can see David, yes. So anybody working in that age group between puberty and adulthood, where we know there are significant changes that go on in the brain and the brain's processing, and a lot to do with chemicals. Now, these chemicals obviously happen directly before an event, but they also shape the events that are going to come, because when we're talking about things like neuroscience, biology, endocrinology, hormones, genetics, things like that, what we've got to remember is that our brain is shaped by our experiences, but our experiences are also shaped by our brain. So we've got those 2 things going hand in hand, going one to the other, and changing on a regular, if not a daily, minute-by-minute basis. So we've got 2 really big subjects there already, and that's not even counting behavior as a subject. We've got neuroscience and we've got endocrinology, and then we took genetics into the mix. So for me, this is always very important when we're talking about behavior, because we can't be expected, especially as educationalists, as pedagogists or andragogists, I got that out in the end, we're not neuroscientists or endocrinologists or geneticists, or often even psychologists. So therefore, we've got to think about what we can have control of. So 3 years ago, we clearly as a college took a different step away from managing student behaviour, and we started talking about promoting positive behaviours in our classrooms and our outside environments, because that is more manageable, because we're not in control of the individual, their behaviours, their neuroscience, their past history, all of their experiences. But what we can control is the context of our organisations and our institutions and our classrooms. So the environments that we put people in and what we expect from them within those environments. So that was a clear step away when we're talking about the difference between promoting positive behaviours and managing student behaviour, because the individual has a hard enough job managing themselves. When we then try and manage 30, 35 people in a classroom, we've got to be realistic about what it is we can achieve and what the expectations on us are. So that's just a very quick tour of understanding of how behaviours come about and when we watch them. So thinking about individuals and our individual experiences, it's time to show me your brains. So what I'm going to ask you to do, if you haven't already done so, if you could just, I'm just going to stop sharing my presentation for a second. Now this is where technology hopefully will be my friend, but I can't even get them. There we go. Put that over there, come back to Zoom. Right, okay, stop sharing for a second. So now I can see the gallery of people. Hopefully everybody can see multiple people as well. If you have got the ability to put on your camera and you have a picture of your brain, please hold it up to your camera, and hopefully then, let's have a look. I can see Mr. Mark Dixon's in there. I like it. Hey, there we go, Beefy, he's there. Right, oh, I see some sunshines, I see some pie charts, I see some squiggles, and some like clouds, mind maps, question marks, or ideas and information. Oh, a sponge. I think Paul's got a sponge up. Right, quiet or confused. I can see there on Rebecca's. Right, wonderful. Hopefully, oh, I can see music in Soraya's there, so the things that are important to people. So I'm sorry I haven't been able to comment on everybody's, but thank you very much to everybody who shared that. I can see Sophie said she didn't want to hurt anybody's eyes, but she's drawn some stick people. That's fantastic. There is no problem with that. There is no ranking. We have got a professional artist in our midst of Mark, a caricaturist. So, and he has definitely lived up to expectation on that. So thank you, Mark. But thank you, everybody, for sharing. Now, the reason I did that, and hopefully everyone had a chance to see the gallery, see lots of other people's drawings as well. Now, there's a clear reason why I asked you to a representation of how you experience your brain, because just as a very simple activity there, we saw how different that can be. So all of us experience the world through our brains, through our cognition, through our perception, through our eyes, through our ears, through our senses, all of the above, and it can be very different for us all. So we can all know that we can be in the same situation, but experience something very different as a context. And that's something we need to be very aware of when we're expecting people to learn, because learning isn't always easy. Learning is a challenge. Now, sometimes we can make that challenge more challenging. I like that. I like Mark's put his advert in there. I like him. Oh, good. Never miss an opportunity there. So it can be it's very important that we're not putting challenges in place that don't need to be there. And this is, is key to being an inclusionist. Sarah talked earlier briefly about the social model of disability and look at it as strength-based. So we're working with people, how they work, and we're removing barriers to them achieving what they wish to achieve. So, again, the basis of inclusion. Now, I'm going to try and share my screen again. So hopefully my technology will not let me down. Hopefully everyone can see my presentation again. Great, I've got a thumbs up from Karen, fantastic. Thank you very much. So we've got a gallery of brains. We're thinking about empathy. We're thinking about what behavior really means, or what we mean when we use those words. And we're thinking about how these different experiences enter into our learning spaces. So this is quite a complicated slide. And again, I said I was very ambitious in what I was going to share. I am going to share that image into the chat in a moment. It might have to be at the end because I'm not sure if I'm technically adept enough to share it at the same time. But I'm sharing this because these 5 things on this diagram, so we've got information processing, sensory processing, communication, social interaction, and dexterity or motor skills. Now, I've pinged these out of the Autism Education Trust areas of difference. So thankfully, we don't talk about a dyad of impairment or a triad of impairment when we talk about autism like we used to. We talk about areas and degrees of difference. Now, again, this is when people talk about a spectrum of autism. And what we need to move away from is the idea that spectrum is a line, because it isn't a line, it's quite a complicated structure. So in that, I'm going to put this into the chat, and I'm going to ask you another point to reflect on how that your diagram, how your abilities in terms of those 5 areas of difference change depending on the environment or the context you're in. So I've put there, number 1 could just be how you feel generally. So if we look at 0 being the center of that diagram and moving along the lines, so we think about how we function in terms of information processing, communication, social interaction, dexterity in a general situation. What about when we feel stressed? What about when we feel anxious? Do we think that might make a change to how we function in those areas? What about when we feel comfortable? Maybe we could feel too comfortable, and what effect would that have? And the last one is in flow. So if anybody's familiar with the term flow in terms of the wonderfully named, I love the name, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, about when we're in that period of time where we feel comfortable or competent in the skills that we have, but we're not in our comfort zone. So again, linking into what Soraya was saying, we're not in the comfort zone, we're not in the stress zone, we're in the flow zone. Okay, and then again, how that will change how we shape or how we feel. Now, again, talking about an empathy model, when we think about our students and the context we put them in and how that could affect their ability to process the information they're being given, how comfortable they feel in their sensory processing in our environments, how that affects their communication with other people, their interaction with the people in their environments and things in their environment, and their ability to actually physically form actions. for me, I've always found this quite powerful in thinking about what it is we're expecting from people and how we expect it from them. And sometimes, you know, I think in education we're guilty of aiming for the middle and therefore miss everybody. Because not everybody's in the, well, very few people I think are in the middle. We're all somewhere different and around here. Okay, so again, I understand this is a whistle stops tour. Obviously the slides are shared, and I'm more than happy for anybody to contact me afterwards regarding anything that I shared today. That's a quote that I put on there, which I am going to read out as well, you know, if anybody has any issues with that. So the quote says, "I've come to a frightening conclusion that I am the decisive element in the classroom. It's my personal approach that creates the climate. It's my daily mood that makes the weather. As a teacher, I possess a tremendous power to make a child's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or heal. In all situations, it is my response that decides whether a crisis will be escalated or de-escalated, and a child humanized or dehumanized." Now that's quite an old quote, as you can see, that's from 1993. But I remember the first time I read that, which was, you know, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and it gave me goosebumps. Because for me, that really hit the nail on the head succinctly about our environment, our classrooms as environments, or our working and learning spaces as environments, and the impact we can have on the individuals within those environments. So I thought I'd share that, and I do share that a lot because I think it's still very, very relevant. So thinking about what we've done as a college and how we've tried to look at our environments and our context and how we can do things, you know, thinking of those things that Shara said, communication, clarity, consistency, consequence, and celebration. So we created something called the 5 P's of professional expectations, or positive expectations. Of positive behaviour, sorry. So expectations of professional and positive behaviour. So as you can see the slide working out there, so what we started point, we looked at what skills and behaviours industry was asking for. And there's 2 examples of the top 10 there from Target Jobs and from Forbes magazine. And obviously there's a lot of information there, and it wasn't always completely in the understanding and the realms of the language we would use working with people. So we grouped the words together, and those words came out with 5 P's. So we used a simple mnemonic of 5 letters, 5 words starting with the same letter, which works really well. So those 5 P's are positive, polite, punctual, prepared, and professional. Because we wanted to be preparing our young people, our students, to become positive citizens and positive employees of the future. So we had to look into what industry wanted, what the job market was asking for. But then we had to then present that and communicate that in an understandable way that everybody could understand and everybody could take on board. But as I've done with you today, it's not as simple as saying, you need to be positive, you need to be polite, you need to be punctual. We need to help people to understand what those words mean, but also what it means to them as an individual. So the task I asked you to do at the beginning, where I asked you to complete the sentences about each of these 5 words. So then you have your own personal context and understanding of what those expectations are and what they mean to you. And that's something that we are now doing with all of our students. So these 5 P's are very clearly communicated. They can't get away from them. They're on banners, posters in classrooms, TV screens. They're part of our induction. They're a part of our reviews. They come in time and time again. But as people are putting in about boundaries, they have to be dynamic as well, because they change with the people. This is about the journey that people are on with us from their starting point through to when they progress into the either further education, higher education, or employment. And like I said, it's about preparing people individually and inclusively to become positive citizens and positive employees in a language that we can all understand and we can all use. So that, just to reiterate, so going back to the earlier diagram, it's all about that context. It's about preparing. So it's about preparing and promoting our positive context so that people can thrive and feel included. So just there's a list there of how we promote positive behaviours. So we create an environment that is inclusive of difference and conducive with positive behaviour. It has to start with expectations, as I think a few of us have said already today. It has to be clearly communicated, it has to have clarity. You have to give people opportunity to discuss and explore these expectations as individuals so they can take ownership of them, so they understand what they mean to them. It's about compliance. and not conformity, and definitely not about control. We want a community, we want people to buy in and to people be a part of it. We often say you do the first 4 Ps, so the positive, polite, punctual and prepared, and you get the 5th one free, because you could argue that's being professional. And it needs to include everyone and be owned by everyone. And that last point obviously summarises the whole of that list. I'm aware of time, so I'm going to crack on because we are now at 12 p.m. So just to return to the seed that I planted at the beginning. So positive behaviour facilitates success more than qualifications do. Now, the eagle-eyed of you will have noticed that the quote is ever so slightly different. So instead of it saying positive behaviours facilitate success more than qualifications do, it's become positive behaviour, because positive behaviour is a collection of behaviours. It's not only one thing. And if we're successful, then we can build into a whole rather than being a part. And again, that's about inclusion. It's a sum of parts, each part being able to be different and unique in its own way. That is time on me. I know it's been a whistle-stop rollercoaster. I haven't had a chance to read through all of the chats, all the comments. I will do so now and look through and put anything in the chat that will help, including that diagram. Thank you very much for your time, your interaction and your involvement. Over to Karen. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Pete. Certainly some things to think about there. I'm not sure if anyone saw my son there, but I quite enjoyed doing that. And I think sometimes it's nice to put things onto paper, isn't it? And thank you for everybody for sharing that. Yeah, certainly some good thought processing there. And thank you, Say, for sharing what you're doing there. Well done, Pete. Okay, lovely. We've got Aaron up next, who's going to be sharing some strategies for working with looked after children. Aaron should be around somewhere. Here I can see him at the bottom of my screen. Yeah. Aaron, would you like me to share my screen or yours?
Yeah, can you share yours, please?
I certainly can. Yes, bear with me a moment. I'll just get things up and running.
So just as Karen's kind of loading up, I'll just hopefully be able to see kind of the link between kind of Soraya's session and Pete's session, in terms of kind of some of the successful strategies we've been doing to support young people. I think nationally, attainment gaps for young people have always been a concern. What we did, so I'm Aaron, I'm the Head of Behaviour for Learning at Derby College. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Karen. So our cup of tea moments, we're going to talk about cup of tea moments. So what we did, first of all, as members of staff, is when we're in times of trouble, we have a cup of tea, and when we have a conversation and we have a catch-up. So a group of practitioners across the organisation thought about how might we close the gap for looked after young people, and we decided to do a designed thinking experiment, and that design thinking experiment was nothing kind of wild. It was actually looking at what we already do and kind of differentiating it for this particular client group. So we looked at what our inclusion support team do, which is led by Sarah Good, and how teachers use the support plans in the classrooms really well. And when support plans are used well, actually the students make good progress. So we kind of thought, tip that on its head, and let's look at actually creating a support plan for our looked after cohort, whether they've got an inclusion need or not. So that's kind of where we started off, really. You'll also see kind of links there to kind of the other side of the strategy, which was around social pedagogy, that you've had opportunities to kind of dip your toe in today as well. And we wanted to look at how we can meet the social barriers to kind of students, really, for learning. Okay, so that was our intent. So a group of us got together, and we have I always say we have a huge resource in education, and that huge resource is people. People have got excellent skills, knowledges, and they can kind of use their skills and knowledge to contribute to what we actually need to do. But ultimately, what this project included is the voices of our young people. And that's always tricky when you want to talk about sensitive topics. But there was crucial, really, for ensuring that we kind of got this project off the ground, and we was doing the right things, because we didn't want to do something that we thought was in the best interest of the students. We wanted to work with the students to ensure that what we wanted to put in place was right for them. But we also had the virtual head teachers from the local authority and social workers which were actually involved and kind of looked at what we was doing to kind of get their angle from an external agent point of view as well. Thank you. So we also looked at kind of a whole organisation approach, and we're still on this journey. We really want to become a kind of a trauma-informed workforce where everybody understands that all people that walk through our doors may have had some kind of social barriers to learning, and what that actually means and the impact it may have on students in the communal areas and in the classrooms. So it's not just about if they've got a support plan, it's about the holistic student. It's about them being at the centre of everything that we do. So we've put on huge amounts of professional development, which has included a diverse range of departments, so from the kind of the welfare team to the pastoral team, teachers inclusion, etc. And as mentioned before, we've worked with Derby University, as Saraya mentioned, on the social pedagogy kind of angle, which has led to us now rolling that out across the workforce to try and get that message across further. To inspire more people, to get more people to understand, and kind of to take everyone on a journey. Thank you. We continue to work with the virtual head teachers, and not just for the city, because obviously we deal with quite a lot from over the country as well. And that was really to kind of build up real positive relationships and work with them to change their systems and the way they work as well. So a lot of the education plans are now online, and it's trying to get that information quicker before we have to actually do a PEP meeting or a PEP review with the individual student. So we can actually start to gain more of an understanding from social workers, from the teaching team, from the inclusion team, which is all collated on the central database, depending on the local authority. And we can kind of ensure that all the strategies that we're actually putting in place is kind of focused on the individual student. So we did a huge training event to train more designated people. So we haven't just got one central person, we've got more now across the organisation who are classed as designated teachers in theory, linked to looked after young people. Thank you. So you'll notice again the diamond there, and it's just to kind of reminding you that actually every young person is a diamond, but they're not all fully polished, but they've actually got the opportunity to flourish and kind of excel. But when we spoke to the students and we asked them what they wanted from us as practitioners, some of the things, three things really stood out. And the first one was kind of be available, take time to get to know me. That's what the voices of the students actually said. And then we looked at how that linked into some of the things we was already doing in terms of social pedagogy, and we looked into things such as the common third. And the common third is kind of creating a community shared situation. And it's kind of a symbol really of kind of building positive relationships with young people. There's no power in this kind of relationship now. You can actually work with a young person on something that neither the practitioner or the young person's ever done before, whether that's learning to play a musical instrument together or doing some sporting activity together. It's about nobody's got the power. We're both equal. We both have never experienced this before, but we're now wanting to look at this common third. And that was a real great opportunity for staff to find out more information about that student using informal education. The other crucial one that the students actually said to us is notice if I'm upset or angry. That was crucial because sometimes as practitioners we think, well, what's that got to do with us? But it's crucial that we know what the key triggers are that would enable that young person to either become upset or angry. And that could be things such as smells, sounds, etc. I mean, I know I don't know if people are familiar with Derby, but there is a person that always walks backwards, taking note of number plates. He's well known in Derby, and if any loud sound happens near him, he actually hits the deck. And the reason why that is from the country where he came from. His family was blown up in a car. So his experience, he's gone through so much trauma. So every loud noise he hears, he's kind of goes back into that traumatic mode. And he's always looking behind him because he felt guilty for not taking the registration number of that particular car that his family was involved in. So there's all sorts of things that we need to be aware of for our students, and these trigger moments that actually may happen in or outside of our classroom. The third one that the students actually said was understand that my past will affect my present, which I thought was really, really kind of insightful, but also help us on that journey in the future. So they was linking the kind of the past and how it may impact on them currently and their future as well. Thank you. So in terms of adverse childhood experiences, we started to explore this in a bit more depth, and we've gone on a lot of external trips out there to gain more knowledge. And this was part of our strategy to kind of create this kind of trauma-informed workforce. So adverse childhood experiences is a diverse range of experiences, from domestic violence to kind of parents with mental health issues, member of the households being in prison, etc. Grown up where adults experience alcohol, drug problems. But what the research actually says is if a young person has 4 adverse childhood experiences, they're more likely to experience suicidal thoughts or self-harm. So reflecting on our own students and kind of the experiences they've got, and thinking about mental health and how that's kind of on the increase, it's looking at how we can, it's about social inclusion in the classrooms as well, social and emotional inclusion, so we can kind of support with their well-being whilst they're in the classroom. They are a vulnerable group, and it's kind of exploring and understanding what are their key triggers. And crucially, and if we move on to the next slide, the key thing to find out what works best for the student is by asking them. So we collaboratively created the story, My Story, and this is about helping the individual understanding and valuing me. And this actually is completed with the young person, and it's looking at things such as anniversaries, so that could be kind of deaths within the family. It could be looking at kind of other things that have affected them in their life as well. And with the youngsters that we deal with, some are in children's homes, some are not, some have got foster families and have got a real supportive environment as well. But one of the things that we notice more and more of is those that were in the classrooms were potentially looking over the shoulders, and staff were thinking, oh, they're not actually paying attention, they're distracted, etc. But when we started to complete things like this, we was finding out more about that individual, and they said they was also always fearful, and they always had to watch out and look after the back. So it's thinking of different seating strategies or seating plans in the classrooms to enable that young person to have their back to the wall, for example, so they've got no kind of fear behind them. And these support plans are now shared with the delivery teams as well. We actually pulled in a group of young people with their social workers, carers over the summer period, and we completed this in a safe space. We completed, so they had that opportunity to discuss it before they actually started their induction, and we are seeing positive impacts from that at the moment in terms of retention and attendance. Okay. And another thing that kind of stuck out to us as well is about the kind of emotional age of some of these people. Some are very advanced and others aren't. So when we're actually kind of using them support plans, it's a differentiating kind of the language that we use, and ensuring that they actually understand what they're trying to say to us, because they're not always at that kind of age level. So as adults, it's important that we've kind of got that kind of empathy, that patience, and we are investing in spending time working with these individual young people. Okay, next. So this one really, and we've started to use this more in our professional development time as well, to kind of enable practitioners to reflect. So ultimately, this is about when your coping strategies. So in life, we all have ups and downs, and our thoughts. So when our thoughts are rational and our emotions are calm, with regards to daily stress, we're said to be functioning within the window of tolerance. So that's where we're functioning when we're kind of dealing with things, including daily stress, in a calm manner. So we're actually in that window of tolerance. However, if somebody's had a traumatic experience in the past and they're struggling to deal with these stressful things in the present, it can be difficult for that individual to kind of stay within that window of tolerance. And you may have seen those kind of behaviours expressed in and out of the classrooms, but it's actually now trying to understand the reasons why and using the strategies that the students have told us in and out of the classrooms too. But it's about, so the hyperarousal section, so people know as fight or flight response. So that's when people are anxious, overwhelmed, they can't react, they can react with anger or aggressive outbursts. So again, when we talk to students about their kind of support, their My Story plan, we do ask them things that do wind them up. What would kind of get you to get into that area or take you out of your window of tolerance, and how can we best support you to kind of make it regulate? And regulate has to be done with a trusted adult. They can't do it on their own. They haven't been trained to do that yet, and they're still kind of, their brains are still forming. So it's about regulation and trying to look at the best solution for the staff to be able to identify the strategies before they get into that hyperarousal section of the window of tolerance too. But that also, if a student does go into that kind of area of the window, it does cause also other health implications as well. Sleep deprivation, they might not be eating right, there's all sorts of things. So it's about how we help that person manage their toxic stress. And they're usually the noisier students, which we tend to spend more time with in the classrooms. They're the ones that get our attention more. The more worrying ones is the bottom half. And that's kind of known as kind of the freeze response. So even though students are quieter in the classrooms, doesn't always mean that they're okay. And as humans, we do tend to kind of put our focus onto the more noisier ones instead of the more disengaged and quieter ones. And sometimes because of that amount of pressure that they're under, it does have an impact on memory, it does have an impact on kind of motivation, and they just can't shake off what they're going through at that moment in time. Okay. So some of the things, and this links into kind of what last session that Pete was talking about. We have also implemented some other programs or mini programs or coaching and mentoring programs. And the first one about the behavior awareness program, which was developed, and it was developed by Pete and his team, is more about decision making. So enabling young people to really reflect on their decision making and the consequences if they make the wrong decisions. Really positive outcomes last year in terms of that program, and it actually made a real positive impact on retaining them students, where normally they potentially would have gone through kind of the disciplinary process and in some cases been withdrawn, but really good retention rates for those students that were referred to kind of this mentoring service that was kind of set up. Other key things we've looked at was preparing for adulthood. So looking at the looked after young people. So from moving in from a looked after care category to care leaver, and that kind of transition, and because that's kind of overwhelming for some of them. So looking at how we can use our study program much more flexibly to meet the individual needs of the students. And again, another program Pete set up, so Pete does all the work clearly, was the TAP program. And that was an aspirational program which was set up for a school mentoring program, and that was not mainly for year 11s who kind of wasn't demonstrating the positive behaviour that we would expect as a college student, and we went in or go in and mentor them for 8 weeks, working with the school and the individual. And then the last one was about a shared space, and that was kind of a shared open space, a safe space for young people who are looked after. So they now can see that they're not the only one. They've got other people that are going through similar experiences as them, and they don't feel completely isolated. They're not on their own, and we've started to do more social events with a particular group of young people too, who are in care. But as I mentioned at the beginning, the really positive impact is the skill set of the staff team and the collaboration of the wider staff team as well, because not one individual can do it on their own. It is a team approach, but it is an approach which makes a real positive impact on the kind of the students. And the next one, please. And we're not kind of finished on this journey, and we are going to continue because it's not something that you can just stop. So we have been doing some trials. We have been looking at kind of the offer. We have been looking at kind of additional kind of level up clubs for the students as well. And we're going to continue on that journey of professional development around what does adverse childhood experiences mean? What does it mean to be in a children's home? And we'll continue to kind of evaluate the kind of impact of the support plans too. Next one, please. But ultimately, and I think this is what the message that really, really kept coming out from our young people is they just want some time. They want time from us. They want time from their trusted adults. They want to be listened to. They want to be valued. They don't just want to be kind of wiped off and another adult's failed them again. So they wanted some time, and that's what we're going to give them, and that's what we'll continue to give them. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you so much, Aaron. Lots of thought-provoking comments there that you've made, and really supporting those young people within your environment. It's interesting you mentioned there about the importance of collaboration and the reiteration of that, and I think that is really, really key. So let me just stop sharing my screen, and thank you so much for your input this morning. Wonderful. We've got one further presentation this morning, which is from Diana Smith, and I'm just going to bring Diana's PowerPoint up on my screen here and share my screen for Diana. So you should be able to see that now. Can you see that, Diana?
Yes, thanks, Karen.
Wonderful. So this is our last presentation this morning. So do feel free to keep popping your thoughts into that chat, and of course keep tweeting using that hashtag Grow Your Potential. So some lovely comments coming through for all our presenters this morning. So last but not least, over to you, Di.
Thank you. Thanks, Karen, and thanks to everyone who's presented and listened. I think the overview that I'm going to present to you about the approach Derby College takes to support its students who've got English as an additional language really encompasses aspects of every single presentation today. So it is a micro, you know, it represents actually all the things that we've been talking about today. And any ideas that you have from your own colleges or settings, any suggestions that you think we could be doing further to improve our provision is, and from my perspective as the advanced practitioner for cross-college ESOL in the college, will be really welcomed in the chat, please, because we're always wanting to develop further. Next slide, please, Karen. So I'll give a brief overview of our provision that we currently have. We have bespoke provision, but the bespoke provision is definitely designed with the end product in mind of providing progression into other areas of the college. So over the years, we've had a Lexis program. It's called the Lexis program. We've had that running for about 15 years now. And it was designed initially to really try and address the need that was coming out from the main college provision, that the barrier of the English language was too large in a way for some lower level students to be able to really truly access that provision. So we developed that program as a study, and now it's in the formation of a study program. So its intent really is to be a bridge to other courses. We offer English, ESOL, maths, ICT, qualifications and tutorial. And we have a vast enrichment program built within that to try and offer integration opportunities so that the students don't feel separate from the other areas of the college, to provide them with a lot of access to outside opportunities, trips, clubs, this sort of thing, and different community groups. And obviously we have a very personalised career and progression service built into that, provided primarily from a personal coach who is an expert in helping ESOL students. So we offer on that, as well as our main programme, a flexible short course option, which I think is sort of picks up some of the ideas that Pete sort of talked about in terms of promoting positive behaviour ideas. That short course is responsive, it runs 3 times a year. It is designed really to try and attract marginalised groups, in particular in Derby, the Roma students. And we've had quite a lot of success really with trying to re-engage, if you like, some students who perhaps would not be enjoying their education by that provision, and some success stories in them either progressing onto the main programme or into further study. Derby's got quite a large population of Roma students. The flexibility with that also allows for asylum seeker students to come in if they move into the area at different times in the year, so they're not waiting until the next September start. We offer taster sessions. I believe Mike Grange might still be with us from construction. We've developed a range of taster sessions where students can go into other curriculum areas and really get a hands-on experience before they make their choices, so that they are more informed about moving on. In our adult centres, where we've got hundreds and hundreds of students learning, we've got community-based provision, and again, we've got careers advice and progression links, particularly to courses like Access and other more relevant areas to help adult students access the world of work. Next slide, please, Karen. In terms of the holistic approach, and obviously Aaron and some of the other presenters, Sarah and Julie, have referred to this, we have a hugely experienced inclusion team in the college, and they're experienced in terms of their ESOL awareness as well, and their support for ESOL and or EAL students. So we're very lucky in that respect. We have a base room in most of the main college sites where we can send our students to on a drop-in basis for additional support. And because of the experience within those teams, the support which is offered is really, really useful for those students to develop their language further. The personal coaches, as I've already mentioned, are really, really well qualified, particularly from the work that Aaron's team have been doing to really raise awareness about all the issues that students may be facing. We have a huge cohort of looked after children on our Lexis programme, a lot of them from asylum seeking backgrounds. So I think that overall holistic approach from the college at the moment is really having a huge impact upon what we can offer in terms of additional support. And again, careers guidance as well. We're starting to get some more bespoke careers guidance now, which is developing for ESOL students. Obviously COVID, it's been nice today. We haven't talked about COVID much, have we? So I'm sorry to drop the C word in there, but obviously, I'm sure some of you who are supporting students who maybe experience digital poverty have been battling with these problems for the last few months. We've really tried to either offer device support to students, or at least make sure that there is access within all the college sites where students are learning to be able to come in and book laptops to be able to access their learning, and that's been set up really well now. So we're finding we've gone from 30 or 40% engagement at the start of lockdown with some of our digital ESOL classes, we're up to 90% now, particularly with the younger age cohort, which is brilliant. Next slide, Karen, please. We've been very fortunate recently. We've been recognised as a College of Sanctuary, And it may be something that you in your colleges or schools or university even may be something that you might be interested in trying to promote within your organisation. There is an official award that can be granted, and it's really recognition of all the work that all the people across the organisation are constantly doing to try and create a safe and welcoming environment for everyone, of course, but this award is particularly focused upon the support and welcome that's offered to asylum seekers, refugees, people who are seeking sanctuary from other countries. And there is an ongoing focus in the college, really, as some of the other presenters have alluded to try and make sure that Derby College is a place where people are aware of other situations, where they are experienced in dealing with issues that might come up and learning about people from other cultures. And I think we've had some success with that, quite a lot of success. And I think the award honours that. We work in conjunction with a city group, the City of Sanctuary, and most towns and cities across the country may have something set up like this. That's mainly charitable and voluntary organisations working together to try and support asylum seekers and refugees throughout their communities. As part of that process, learner voice is highly valued. Next slide, please, Karen. To try and support with all these things, obviously we have a range of dedicated steering groups where staff from all areas of the college, not just teaching and leadership roles, can be part of. So we welcome people from any walks of life who work, any areas of work within the college. The inclusion team, again, the educational support workers really are really proactive about getting involved in those steering groups. So we have, we keep it on the agenda through those steering groups. And again, we try to encourage student participation. And as you all know, student voice can be very powerful when it comes into those meetings. Next slide, please, Karen. So I think one of the things that we've really tried to develop over the last few years is that recognition that although we've got a bespoke provision, while the students are in that provision, they need to be integrating with other students in the college. So we have a range of different projects and we're constantly trying to innovate in that way. The picture there is from a project that happened last year, was it earlier in this, last year now, the Teach, in conjunction with Teach 2. And that was a project to create a community garden in the Peak District. And that was led really from the staff on the construction and horticulture teams. But they did work, really hard to make sure that other students, and in particular the Lexis students, were invited to come and get involved in that. And they really enjoyed that. They got a lot out of it, working with the other students. They went on a dry stone walling course there. And we have other smaller projects like that work through the year with organisations like the business department, with departments across the college. Now, the main bit of magic, if you like, referring back to Sarah's initial presentation, if you could click on Bookfest, please, Karen, something we're immensely proud of is a project that we are involved with in conjunction with Derby Bookfest. If you could scroll down, please. So every year the Lexis students, what we do is we create a published book. If you could scroll down to the bottom, please, Karen. So here's some images from the published book. And the project it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of input, and it carries on over a series of months across the academic year. And as part of that process, we encourage our learners to tell their stories. So again, this refers back to elements of Soraya's presentation, where she was talking about how, we really need to get behind the learners' experience in their life. And of course, Aaron's and Pete's references to past history, formulating how we see our learners and how we need to learn about our learners. And this book has provided us an incredible opportunity to hear our learners' stories, which are varied, diverse, harrowing, uplifting, you know, every adjective that we can think of when we think about our students. And you can see that the stories are written. They enjoy workshops, things like this, to help them with their experience of being writers. And they work in collaboration with the art department. So if you have, just click on the link below, please, Karen, where it allows you to view the publication. So we actually we make some time for our students to integrate with students from the A-level centre in the art department there. And they tell their learners the story, they share their experiences, and the art students work together to produce the illustrations that link with their stories. So if you just click through a few more pages, please. So you can see some examples here of some of the beautiful artwork. For the lower students, this example here, this sort of more cartoon storyboard, is a way that we include our pre-entry, entry 1, entry 2 students who perhaps, you know, are still finding it hard to put their stories down in words, but we don't want to exclude them, so we still give them that opportunity to tell their stories. And the art students, as you can see, do this fantastic job of really bringing them alive. So we've produced that book now for 5 years. I think it's in its 5th year now. It's not just available as an ebook, although you can I'll put the link in the website after if you're interested in having a look. You can see I've got we have hard published copies as well. They sell, I think, for $4.50 with the hard copies, but obviously you can have a look and read the stories online and learn more about that project. But what that project does is give the students involved in it tremendous boost in terms of their confidence. They become published authors. They get an opportunity to integrate. They get an opportunity to tell their stories in front of wide audiences. So it really helps them with their speaking and listening and their presentation confidence. And as you can see, it's high quality and something that the students and the staff can be very proud of who work on that. Thank you. Karen, could we just, yeah, I've only got a couple of other slides to talk through, and then I'll take any suggestions that anyone's got. I would be very interested in that, please. In terms of the support that we offer to staff across the college, you know, I am dedicated, but I don't know how much of a good job I do personally in supporting staff, but it's nice that we've got that role in the college, isn't it, as an advanced practitioner who can focus upon cross-college ESOL issues as well as just within a particular department. We have different, Mark Dixon, who's in the session today, he's been really proactive in trying to create media, if you like, within the college to really try and promote awareness of different aspects of teaching. And we have the Teaching and Learning Hub, so we have an ESOL support section on there. We have newsletters where staff from different areas can communicate across the college, which is brilliant. We have a huge range of professional development now in the college, not just inset days, but regular professional development slots. And obviously we can use them to embed staff training, just not only on some of the issues that we've been talking about today, but also we can get external speakers in to talk in those sessions on things like migrant support, modern slavery, these sort of aspects that might be impacting upon our students. And all probationary staff now in the college have access to a training module, which gives them some tips on supporting EAL students within their classes. Last slide, please, Karen. So we've got obviously we're always wanting to develop further and innovate further. Our ideal really, and I'm sure some of your colleges may have this already working really well, and if you have, I'd be very interested in hearing how you make it work. We would like ESOL support, you know, ESOL curriculum language classes to be built into the overall curriculum designed for all our students up to level 3. So at the moment, as you know, as I'm, you know, in the studies program framework, the access is for functional skills or GCSE English and maths classes, but we'd like to be able to create that offer for all our students if the need is there. So that's something we're currently working on. We want to develop something that we're just starting out with in conjunction with Derby Uni, really. We're getting some input from them on how to develop more star groups and conversation clubs to get students more involved. And we would like to start to look at ways that we can personalise our career service for our adult learners more. And I know some colleges within the region do that really well. So thanks, Karen, for working through the slides. Any ideas or anything that anyone would like to say really on that subject? Because I've whizzed through it. So we've actually got 5 minutes.
Yeah, well done. And I think that book and sharing that book and actually for the learners to see their work published is an excellent idea. Really, really valuable. And it's great to see actually it's not a one-off project, but it's actually an ongoing yearly addition to your programme. I think that's superb. Yeah,
it is. And even this year, even in this horrible, strange times that we're living in now, the book in its current form is not, we're not producing it because of the amount of face-to-face work that goes on, but we are still going to produce something, I think, in an ebook form with some stories.
Yeah, can I just add, Di? I think it could be a really powerful resource to share with colleagues in other colleges maybe who are teaching ESOL. You know, if you're trying to encourage reading skills,
yes,
to read about that, and then that might encourage them to write their own stories, and the whole thing develops.
Yes.
So I think it could be a little business there for the college. Books as textbooks, actually, could be fantastic.
Well, there is actually a secondary project that's been based around it, and that is again in conjunction with the university and a group of teachers, I think, on the teacher training course there, where it is actually going to be used as a lesson resource in schools, and there are some lesson plans being developed around it. So, as you know, like as you say, Alison, as a reader and as an interested reader that gives an insight into learners' lives from other countries and their backgrounds, and how that can have a knock-on impact upon awareness amongst our younger students cohort, our younger students in areas where integration is so high up the priority list. You know, I think that's a really good project. Again, that's been shelved slightly because of COVID, but it's definitely something that's going to be developed. So yes, the website, I'll share the website link, and obviously if anyone's interested in that as it develops, please let me know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone this morning. If you do have any questions, please put those in the chat just for the last few minutes of getting together. As I say, what I will do, I think it might be easy to share the chat. There's quite a lot of links coming through in there, so I'm more than happy to do that and share that with you. And of course, I'll forward all the slides for the presenters together in my PowerPoint, so you'll have access to those too. I think it's been a wonderful morning. There's been some great comments coming through on the chat this morning about some of the superb ideas that you've all shared, and do thanks again for all your time that you've spent putting together today's presentations and actually taking the time out this morning to present. Just want to say a couple of things as we go through. Alison and I are very keen to continue TeachMeets, even though they are digital, and they may be digital for some time. We are now thinking of what we could do for a TeachMeet come the new year, maybe the spring or summer terms. Maybe one around assessment might be useful. We did our tech TeachMeet, which I think Mark and Melanie were involved with earlier this year. So we've done that, so maybe something else, maybe something to do with ESOL or languages or English and maths might be a useful addition. So very keen on your thoughts around that. So again, if you have ideas, we will be sharing a very short survey following today's session. So if you could put your comments in that survey as to whether you would be keen to help, any other ideas for a TeachMeet or another session in general. We're very, very keen to hear from you what you want, because my passion is supporting you. That's what we're here for. If we can put events like this on for you to collaborate and to share practice, then I feel like I've achieved something. You know, it was all about feeling achievement. So wonderful, as I say, to have you on board, but let's see about the next steps. You know, what could we do? Someone's actually put on here, Julia G has put on a TeachMeet on assessment and assessor. IQA would be great as well. So maybe around quality assurance. That's a good idea. Lived experiences of students, as this creates a starting point for developing schemes of work. So yes, so ideas already coming through from you. So we've actually this morning given you an extra 15 minutes of time. Look at that. Fantastic. You've got time to have a little bit extended lunch, but I know none of you won't. You'll be back on your emails and you'll be doing your other jobs. You won't use this 15 minutes for you. You'll be using it for your own organisations and your own students to make life better for them, because that's what we do in this sector. So as I say, great to have everybody on board. If no one's got any more comments, I don't know whether Sarah or Melanie would just like to do a lasting thank you. No, but it's wonderful to have, and thanks again to all the presenters this morning. You've done a great job. So round of applause for you all there. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Take care and have a wonderful Friday and a great weekend. You deserve it. Thanks again, everyone. Bye for now. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.